Welcome to Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of Web3 security, compliance, and risk. Join Michael Pearl as he interviews executives from across the Web3 industry to uncover the challenges and opportunities of this rapidly evolving space. Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that focuses on everything security, compliance, fraud, risk. And today we have a very special episode. Today we have the one and only Manny Khan from BitGo. He's the director of cybersecurity, and he is here for an emergency episode. And the reason for that, as you can imagine, is the Bybit mega hack. $1.5 billion that were stolen a couple of weeks ago from the Bybit exchange. Now, since then, there was a lot of ink, so to speak, that has been spilled to describe what happened. Tons of forensics companies that illustrated what happened. Tons of security companies that explained what should have been done to prevent it. And for that matter, we have Manny, who is a cybersecurity expert. He has a very rich background in cybersecurity and specifically in crypto cybersecurity. And Manny, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Michael. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to you and your Cyvers team for putting so much emphasis on this Bybit hack. I couldn't be more pleased with the level of effort that I've seen from your people on your team side on getting information out there and reaching out to the crypto community, especially with something of this magnitude. Just a little bit about me. Like you said, been working in cybersecurity for over 15 years, specializing in crypto security, currently at BitGo as their cybersecurity security advisor. I'm here to talk to you and break down the Bybit safe hack. And that's what we want to do here today, and I'm happy to do so.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, Manny. And yeah, I totally agree. You know, it's a community effort. All the Web3 community needs to pitch in and to try to prevent the next hack. And I think that BitGo are doing a great job with security and putting security first. And that's why we're so happy at Cyvers to partner with BitGo and on many levels, and including the educational level, which is what we're doing right now.
Agreed. And let's start with that. Let's start by breaking down the basics, right? Of understand what happened, how it happened, and then let's get into how BitGo is built differently and how we're architected differently, that we're not even vulnerable to these types of attacks.
Yeah, so that's again, the 1.5. Sorry, that's the $1.5 billion question, right?
Yeah, more than that. I would say that it's probably $100 billion or more type of question. And it doesn't matter the amount. It matters about the customer, the people that rely on us to make sure that their money is safe, that their crypto assets are safe. So let's talk about it, right? What happened? The Bybit hack was a multi-layered advanced attack where hackers, the Lazarus group, exploited blind signing and compromised a safe wallet developer. This wasn't the first time, right, that the Lazarus group and other advanced persistent threat groups out there, out of North Korea especially, have targeted crypto exchanges. With that said, let's talk about what they did here. They took a step to infiltrate the safe developer's environment, gaining unauthorized control over that multi-sig wallet by uploading and replacing an existing JavaScript with a malicious JavaScript. That led to having an exploited vulnerability of blind signing, which is a known common weakness where users sign transactions without full visibility into what they are approving and signing. This is what allowed the attackers to execute that malicious transaction and siphoning over 1.5 billion in assets. Now, Bybit's response included wallet freezing, security reviews, but by then the damage was done.
Yeah.
Let's talk about now how BitGo is different and how we're architected differently than Bybit Safe, and how this attack and similar ones would not even work at BitGo. BitGo just doesn't rely on this based on my say-so. We hire the greatest and best pen testers that we can find to really acknowledge this and understand where we can do better and where we're doing amazing. So, with that said, we're looking at Bybit saying that, hey, these attacks are similar to the ones at Y0X, DMM, and other attacks that have happened that could be
Radiant
possible.
Capital, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Great example. But they're all very similar, right? And we're always doing independent testing performed by a third party objectively and asking them to specifically look for the ability to do things like this, like blind signing, where they come back to us and check for these tricks. And we have to say that our approach stands tough against these, that our approach is different where we only do clear signing. So having this extra vote of confidence from external third parties is very important. It layers on top of what we're already doing, which affirms our belief of cold storage transactions where we use humans and cryptographically secure clear signing. We make sure that our cold storage is truly offline, that our trust team is verifying each and every transaction and those transaction details. We do video ID verifications where the requester confirms what they want the transaction to be. And all that is to say that this Bybit safe hack wasn't just a single failure, but a combination of technical loopholes and process weaknesses that do not happen when you have a secure architecture and secure by design principles in place.
Yes, I want to start from where you finished, basically, and you talked about the many different facets of this hack, right? So obviously it was a wake-up call for the industry, and we all understand this. But if we want to prevent the next hack, and if we want to fully understand it, what part of this hack is most concerning to you? Was it the technical loophole that you've mentioned, the human factor? What's the kind of the biggest issue here that you see with this specific hack that if it would have been taken care of, it would have been prevented?
Great question. I think that where I want to start here is the blind signing. The blind signing remains an industry-wide known issue. Even the most experienced teams can fall victim to this. This attack demonstrated that and how third-party vulnerabilities found in Safe Wallet can compromise an entire exchange. This raises that concern, how multi-sig wallet providers, how they provide support for smart contract changes and upgrades when they manage their security. Now, was there human oversight failure? Yes. Process gaps, misplaced trust? Yes. It's these things that we need exposed that we can really focus in on. And this is where the industry needs to shift from reactive to proactive and preventative security measures, not just a post-breach response.
Yeah. And I've noticed that you're labeling it as the Bybit safe hack, right? Whereas, like, if you read the news, you will see that it's usually referred to as the Bybit hack. So I couldn't have prevented myself from thinking of, there was kind of a blame game between Safe and Bybit, very subtly, but you could still see that, right? And it evolved around who's responsible and who could have prevented it. And even in the wording, I just looked up the wording that the safe statement had. They said this attack targeted to the Bybit safe was achieved through a compromised machine of a safe wallet developer, resulting in proposal of disguised malicious transaction. So even if you read the wording, it's not really clear, if it's their fault or Bybit's fault. So it's kind of something that I want you to clarify for me, please.
Excellent point, Michael. Again, this is a shared responsibility, right? The accountability depends on the specific failure point. In the beginning, if we take a step back, they were going through the natural stages of this incident response, trying to understand what happened. It's where we look at the safe infrastructure to notice that there was a compromise there on the developer side. And they need to take ownership and maintain the integrity of their product. And then moving forward, you need to realize where Bybit failed to enforce security best practices, such as strict whitelisting, spending limits, validation layers, and these key security controls that are missing This is what the takeaway should be, that the partnership between provider and the exchange should be not just on the tech level, but at all levels. So instead of pointing fingers, the focus should be on transparency and the lessons learned here where we can help the community and they can do better.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I wanted to ask you, the hack, as you said, multi-layered, multifaceted, very sophisticated, and they took advantage of several points and loopholes and so on. But still, I want to drill down and to understand whether it was a failure of technology, meaning that, they could have employed other measures. Was it a failure of process, where basically, they didn't have a proper process within their security team or operation team and so on, or just sheer awareness of, just making sure that, you're signing the right transaction and so on? What do you think?
Well, I think the answer is all of the above, right? If you start with the technology piece, partially, yes. Uh, Blind signing and multi-sig weakness have been known industry risks. And what we do at BitGo is use air-gapped cold storage technology, right? And unlike hot wallets, where you have options where you can configure it differently, we saw here that there was a UI-based signing process that was manipulated. We don't have those same types of risks because, again, we do clear signing. We look at the full transaction and then we go from there, where Bybit Safe Hack, again, had the users tricked into signing fraudulent transactions. Our signers at BitGo are never blind. Every transaction goes through multiple layers of human and cryptographic verification, and its legitimacy happens before approvals. And on top of that, we have video ID verification, where attackers are relying on human error. And we account for that by making sure that deception is part of our security threat modeling. And from there, we remove that ambiguity and look at major transaction requests are confirmed via video ID verification. So there's no question about what's being signed and what's not being signed. Now, the process, definitely. They lack of rigorous validation led to unauthorized transactions happening here. I don't think anyone can dispute that. And then when we talk about awareness, we get into that again, having a zero trust approach, zero trust in assumptions, where each approval must be independently verified. So here again, we had a combination of failures, all of which must be addressed holistically, pervasively, and in depth.
Yeah. I have to ask you, we mentioned blind signing and you talked a little bit about, the BitGo architecture and how it's different. I'm trying to understand, usually blind signing, and again, you're the expert here and correct me if I'm wrong, it happens when you're interacting with the smart contract. So essentially you don't get, so let's say I'm sending you a peer-to-peer transaction, wallet to wallet, you're going to see everything, right? The whole deal, you're going to see it on MetaMask, for instance, and so on. But let's say if I'm interacting with a smart contract, with a protocol or what have you, a safe wallet and so on, a smart contract based wallet, right? At the end of the day, you're going to see gibberish. You're going to see an alphanumeric string that you cannot really understand. How do you guys overcome that and basically avoid blind signing?
Well, you don't take away the human layer. You also add automated checks and restrictions. You reduce the trust that you have in these third-party systems and applications and really do make sure that your staff is never blindly approving anything without full transaction context. So where we as BitGo eliminate this, right? We do this by using air-gapped cold storage with no blind signing for complete transaction verified by video-backed confirmation. And that's where we really need to bring it all together. There is always going to be a human element check. Your people are your first line of defense. And then you're also going to need automated checks. Like you said, it just looks like gibberish, but there are key pieces of transaction details that you should be looking at to make sure that nothing's been changed. And it could be using hashes and things of that nature to make sure that nothing is being changed on the back end as well.
Yeah, that's definitely important. And there are other complementary services and tools in place. Again, full disclosure, the the Cybersecurity Interceptor, and I know many that you wrote about it extensively. about how it could have prevented the hack, in a sense that the hack could have been simulated, validated, and at the end, the user could have seen this without blind signing. Basically, the opposite of blind signing. I'm trying to find the word, and to actually
Clear
see
signing is the word.
clear signing. That's great. I'm going to coin it. And basically see if anything is wrong with that transaction. And clearly, in that case, they would have seen that the transaction will go sideways. So yeah, I totally agree. There are solutions out there. Perhaps even a combination of solutions, BitGo's, Cybers, and others can be something that could bring you very close to 100% of protection.
Very much agreed, Michael.
Yeah. So, if we look, okay, I think we explained in a very thorough way what happened and how it could have been prevented. But you look at past exchange hacks and there's a pattern, right? And you see that the hackers are always evolving. By the way, the FBI has already confirmed that this was the work of the Lazarus group, right? And you see that we're not dealing with, two bored teenagers in their mom's garage. We're talking about nation states with huge amounts of money that are going into that. So how can we prevent the next hack? How can we stay ahead of the curve? Because let's say we fix this problem, but tomorrow, there's going to be a 0-day attack. By the way, there is a new Netflix show called 0-Day, and all of a sudden everybody knows what 0-Day is, right? So the next attack that is going to be totally different or slightly modified from this one, how can we prevent it?
Well, Michael, you're talking about something that's faced the industry for many, many years, right? Whether it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or yesterday, this question keeps coming up, right? How do we get ahead of our adversaries? How do we stay ahead of emerging threats? What we talk about is hackers are innovating daily. They don't have red tape like we do that we need to get approvals and cross-functional agreements on. They just see a target. They're like, how do I quickly get away with this and get away with doing it without anyone realizing I did it? What we need to do here is that think about real-time threat intelligence and how do we get proactive? And that's really where I think exchanges can take a really hard stance, is getting that real-time threat intelligence, building out adaptive smart security models that monitor behavioral patterns before an exploit like this occurs. And I think that's on top of doing regular red team exercising. If you hire and you get outside third-party pen testers to come in like we do at BitGo and to say, hey, we want you to do your best and simulate all the hacks that have happened, all the attack scenarios that you can think of that make sense, and try to identify any weaknesses proactively, and you take that feedback and you do something with it, and you build from a point of security first, that's where you're going to see improvement in your product development lifecycle. You're going to see improvement in your software development lifecycle by using these security first principles. It needs to be secure by design, security principles. So again, I cannot stress this enough for the industry that for this to be dynamic, to stay ahead of emerging threats, we need to apply the secure by design principles. We need to be in the room when we architect these security controls. We need to provide defense in depth and in breadth so that our defenses are not static.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I agree with you, the bread and butter of pen testing, auditing, code review, and all the rest. And obviously combined with real-time threat intelligence, proactive threat intelligence and preventative threat intelligence that can prevent, the threat before it even comes into your system. And then you have to deal with it and you have to mitigate that when it's already too late. As you said, when they started working on it, and I'm sure that, they brought the best people inside and the best advisors. And I know that we were at Cybers in touch with them as well and tried to help them. But what people don't understand that it's already too late, right? It's like doing insurance after you had a car accident. It's not the same as doing it before, right? So
absolutely, Michael. I think that organization like yours, Cybers, and your team is one of the pinnacles of the community in the sense that you do reach out and you do let the community know when you see something. And it's been very appreciated by BitGo and myself at all levels. So thank you for that.
thank you so much. So you talked about BitGo, and I want to dive deeper to understand better the whole idea of custodianship. So in your view, what are the key pillars of secure crypto custodianship? Whether it's an exchange or financial institutions, what should they have in place?
Well, I think what we need to look at is a couple of different things, such as multi-layer security. And what that can include is HSMs, hardware security modules, multi-sig wallets, and making sure that we have strict role-based access controls. The second thing we should look at is zero trust architecture. Never assume, ever, and always verify. And then I come back to my point that I made earlier, independent security audits and pen tests. Like you said, code reviews, testing that code, testing the infrastructure is so vital to the security of your crypto. It is known and it can be addressed. So what last thing I want to mention is the secure key management. Key management is a big part, obviously the part in a lot of these situations. We need to minimize exposure of any private keys. And that can happen through multi-sig wallets, multi-MPC wallets, meaning multi-party computational wallets. And remember, security is not just a feature, it's a foundation. So while these are key principles, they are not the only principles. So please, again, I encourage the community to go back to the architect, go back to the idea phase and look at it at each layer and each phase as to what they can do.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that statement, and I endorse that statement. So we talked a little bit about the bread and butter, and you talked a little bit about the cold storage, and then I'm trying to kind of summarize because there are a lot of moving parts here, and we talked about the pen testing, and we also talked about the pre-transaction validation that we mentioned earlier, and kind of hovers above it the idea of automation and AI, right? Because at the end of the day, I always say that, and again, I didn't coin this term. I stole it from somebody else. Blockchain is rich with data, but it's poor of context, right? You don't have the context of the data. So, in order to make sense of it, of the data, you need to have the proper tools, and they need to be automated and quick, and they need to think quick, not only to automate in a stupid manner. So, for that, we have the AI part. What's your take on implementing AI, machine learning, behavioral analysis in security mechanisms? How important is it?
Well, just go back to something you said earlier about context on the blockchain. I don't fully maybe agree with that because I think that there is a lot of data there, and it's just where you look and how you gather that data. So, based on that, you can really use automation, right, to play a larger role, meaning AI can really help with threat detection. Automation can really play a larger role as the technology develops and scales, but it will never replace human intuition. There's that human intuition piece where something feels wrong, that instinct. While automation and AI can help recognize patterns and provide instant responses, scalable responses, repeatable responses, that again is a tool that needs management, maintenance, guidance with a human hand behind it. And the human mind still excels at strategic security decisions where you cannot just leave it to AI or automation to respond to catastrophic or large scale events. You need to have a hybrid approach where you have AI and automation supporting the response efforts with human oversights. This is how you stay ahead of the attackers. And again, I'll mention that AI enhances security, but human expertise, that raw experience of having been through it, seen it, lived it, that remains essential to the plot here.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier about security leadership, I think you called it, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to have, first of all, the CISO and the head of cybersecurity, they need to have a real stand in the company, right?
Mhm.
And I know that, we see that across the industry. They need to be someone that sits close to the table. But not only that, they need to have a proper SOC team, right? That will know how to respond to problems, that will know how to identify things before they happen. So that's something that we see as well with our clients. We can give them the best tools and, automated AI managed machine learning. We deploy geometric machine learning and behavior analysis and anomalies and so on. But at the end of the day, there's this hunch that, the security person has, and the combination of two, I think that's what can lead you to this close to 100% security. Anything else that we've missed here? I think we went through the hack and we went through all the ways of preventing it and some do's and don'ts in cybersecurity. Anything else that you want to add beyond that in terms of Bybit or anything else kind of on a broader sense of security?
Well, I want to just say thank you again to you, Michael, and Cybers for hosting this podcast. I think these are very critical for the community. I think that we do need to be sharing knowledge and remember that we're all part of the same ecosystem here. We all win together, right? I think that the last takeaway that I'll leave everyone with is to communicate, right? We need communication. We need more things like this. And then how, if they're interested, they can participate more. And to do so is by having collaborative efforts to ensure that the bad guys are talking. We should be too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And by the way, where can we follow you? Are you active on Twitter, on LinkedIn to read some of your notes?
Well, thank you for asking. So I'm active mostly on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter. I will be happy to share that with you. But for the purposes of reaching out to BitGo, you can go to www.bitgo.com, or you could reach out to support@bitgo.com, support@bitgo.com. And I'll leave you with this, where we're not just looking at the products, we're looking at the community. We're looking here to make a commitment, as we are today with BitGo, where we deliver trust in digital assets. That is our mission, and that's what we plan to stake to, and we hope that you'll join us for that mission.
On that note, Manny, I want to thank you so much, you and the BitGo team. Pleasure working with you on the podcast and on many, many other things. Really excited about working with you guys, and I'm really impressed by the team, by all the members of the team. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners and viewers will find this valuable.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cybers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cybers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cybers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.